God is lazy and also bored. She created humans so they could do all the work and entertain. Humans are lazy. That's why we created technology so it could do all the work. But humans are contradictory. The joke's on us because we forgot the point of technology. It's not enough that the machine is productive. Man has to keep being productive too. Productivity, of course, isn't necessarily an expression of neuroticism. Productivity can be an expression of creativity, joy, and inspiration. But productivity became our measuring pole. So if you're not productive, you have every right to feel bad about yourself. Not being productive is what we call being lazy, and lazy is used as an insult. But, as with productivity, not all laziness is equal. Aren't we just trying to reach a situation where we can justifiably be lazy in the creative leisure sense? Externally, this looks like technological automation. Internally, this looks like facing the truth of what we are, and as a result, having our neurotic drive fall away. Humanity is still mostly in the headless chicken phase, running around like mad, lost in endless, unnecessary activity. I'm no expert on technology, so don't quote me. You can misquote me, though, to make it seem as if I am an expert. But to me, it looks like we already have all the technology to live a life of creative leisure. The nuance is implied. We're just unable or unwilling to arrange it all correctly. What is missing is the internal part. Though when you get the internal part, the distinction between internal and external is clearly seen to be non-existent, just as an aside. A large portion of humanity is still fully and completely identified with the current system, no matter what the current system is. Some are so identified, they defend the system as if it's one of their limbs. It's the other way around. You are one of the system's limbs. You're also a redundancy, because the system spawns new limbs left and right. So if you're gangrenous, it will lop you off and bat no eye. Being identified with the system also means living in a state of separation. This means being firmly identified with conceptual versions of what you are. This inevitably puts you in competition with your brethren, ergo, you'll do anything and everything to get ahead. The guy who's already on the ground, trying to get up, give him another kick so that he can't even get up, the fucking loser, and you can widen the chasm between you. When did all this start? The story I just made up goes like this. Before there was man, there was a rope that needed some pulling. Eventually man came along and found this rope. Man saw the rope, gained the ability to conceptualize, and turned it into a multidimensional tug of war. Everyone's yanking on different ends, exhausting themselves and barely moving anything at all. Everyone pulling on the same end takes very little effort comparatively and accomplishes much more. Have you noticed how, as a planetary civilization, we've no clue where we're going? Not saying we should have a clue, just asking if you've noticed. We rarely take a look at what the context might be. We're too busy shuffling around parts inside a broken system collectively and individually. Maybe putting that piece over there will fix it all? We're floundering about and taking the floundering for serious work. We need to fix the economy, they say, as if the problem lies with some vague proverbial the economy. No one really cares about many of the things we act as if we care about. The reason why we care about modern value tokens, like stuff and status, is that our survival instinct has been carefully entangled with these concepts. We've been conditioned to want these things because we've been made to believe that what we really want can only be gotten through these things. An important point is that most of the survival we're busy with is social survival. It's all about appearance. And thus, we must be as productive as possible, even if we see that it's kind of stupid. We must do things we don't want to do because social survival compels us. We must seem busy and productive and like we're doing the right things. Otherwise, we might not be the social superstars we want to be. The other day, a relative told me that when she first arrived in Germany, she walked dogs for money. Back home, she told no one the truth. She was ashamed. Walking dogs sounded too lowly compared to sitting in an office and pushing papers for 8 hours a day. Status aside, what sounds more enjoyable? Exactly. This is how social survival works. We trade joy for appearances. This means everyone behaves largely like everyone else because we think being different would get us ostracized. In Mark Twain's The Mysterious Stranger, the angel Satan laughs after the townspeople stone a woman. He and the protagonist walk away from the scene. So we walked away, and I was not at ease, but was saying to myself, he told them he was laughing at them, but it was a lie. He was laughing at me. That made him laugh again, and he said, yes, I was laughing at you. Because in fear of what others might report about you, you stoned the woman when your heart revolted at the act. But I was laughing at the others too. Why? Because their case was yours. How's that? Well, there were 68 people there, and 62 of them had no more desire to throw a stone than you had. Well, ain't that a bitch? We do everything so that the eyes we imagine carefully watching us will be pleased. Sure, we can debate the finer details of what for and why we want these modern value tokens, but let's not. We don't really want them anyway. And yet, we're chasing them because we're so terribly afraid. We don't know who or what or how we are. Thus, we don't know what we really want. And if we knew who and what and how we are, we'd not only know what we really want, we'd also know we already possess everything we really want beyond the fleeting pleasure chase, because it's not separate from what we are. The things we truly want, whether we know it or not, are free. Love is free, happiness is free, freedom is free. It's in the word. But our ideas about these things are not free. We're going after conceptual versions of the non-conceptual reality. These concepts are representations, and every representation is necessarily a misrepresentation, because it's at least once, often twice, thrice, or more, removed from the reality of the no thing itself. When you know that, essentially, you have everything you value most simply by being. You no longer need to look for it elsewhere. Wouldn't you allow yourself some well-deserved laziness? You might be lazy, i.e., not doing anything, out of a sense of paralysis and procrastination. Or you might be lazy out of a sense of inner balance and understanding. This might be a good point to point out the two flavors of laziness I'm talking about. First, an internal sense of slowing down, of peace, of contentment, of acceptance, which may directly lead to the second flavor, doing nothing or very little because the inner activity that compels you into incessant action is no more, or at least is unconvincing. Even if we come upon the first flavor of laziness, we can still want the money, the relationships, the creative work. But why sacrifice our true treasure, not for having them, but for merely wanting them? Consider that you can want things without needing them for contentment now. As children, we play make-believe. Then we're called in for dinner and seize the make-believe. As adults, we continue make-believing, but we never seize it. We bring it to the dinner table. We believe our worth is tied to status and achievement. We believe the psychological realities we conjure in ourselves actually exist out there. We believe in an out there. Being caught up in the sophisticated make-believe of adulthood is a state of trancehood. When you're in trance, you can't even remember that you've forgotten something. Our sin is that we have forgotten we're playing make-believe. Children do not carry that sin. Sticking your head out of the make-believe is a sobering experience. It can have various flavors. Shock, humor, terror, joy are among them. You can only be baffled that we're not all on the same page. Apparently, we don't want everyone to live a relatively happy and dignified life. It seems like we don't want to create the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible, as the book by Charles Eisenstein is titled. Sitting with yourself, recognizing that you've been living a life of lies and make-believe is deeply disconcerting. Seeing that this kind of life is the norm is sad. However, a human might be unwilling to sit with boredom long enough to reach the disconcert and sadness. Boredom is evil. Laziness is evil embraced. So you go back to the multidimensional tug of war, choose a side and pull, just to keep busy, just to avoid being happy. Without laziness, there's no happiness. To be happy, you have to be able to be lazy, not externally, but internally. You have to be so internally lazy that the make-believe stops being convincing for a second. Then the following idea might enter your awareness. I am who I am, and that is enough. Just being is enough. Of course, the world you've been used to disagrees. The make-believe agrees on the disagreement. Being is not enough. Who you are is not enough. And you should probably be someone else, someone better, more productive, more useful, more caring, more involved. But you've opened your eyes, and that kind of talk is now very obviously crazy talk. It could sound like the chirps of an angry puppy, or it can sound like the vicious barks of a ravenous pit bull threatening to tear you apart if you don't submit. Depends on the day, I guess. You might notice an urge to inform the whole wide world. No matter how serious it sounds, we've only bought into a bunch of crazy talk, and we can stop believing it. This is a double-edged blade. There's this short story by H.G. Wells called The Country of the Blind. It's about a mountaineer named Nunez who finds a society of people living in an isolated valley in the Andes. The walls are steep and they can't leave their valley, and they have no eyes. For generations, they've had no sight, and eventually the memory of there ever being something called sight is gone. They believe above them, just out of reach, is a smooth, ceiling-like structure encircling the snow globe that is their world. So this guy comes along and he has eyes. He thinks he can enlighten these blind fools, and of course they think he's the nutso. They forcibly examine him and find these weird spheres in his head and conclude that those must be the source of his crazy ramblings about vision and the sky and the bigger world. So they do the compassionate thing and tell him, "No worries, amigo. We'll just swiftly remove those and your psychotic delusion will be no more." The moral of the story is that not everyone will appreciate being told that there's something called eyes, which they can open and use to see for themselves. The thing with open eyes is that you might see things you don't like seeing, like how much of your activity is fear and survival-based madness. The engine, i.e. personal will, that used to drive this activity will then break down. This is in direct correlation with eyes open, and the mind complains like crazy. I have to do something, anything. And yet, the well-deserved laziness takes over, and you can no longer believe the mind's complaints because you recognize that it's crazy talk. It's the echo of the conditioning machine that has made you crazy in the first place. It's the blind society telling you to scrub the ceiling of the snow globe world. How can you now live in this world? You're no longer off it, but it's still here, and you're still here, still human, albeit not as who you were. And this is a bit of a dilemma, because the one you were seemed to be better equipped to take part in this world, because it was a product of this world. It may be useful to lean into the laziness for a while, to starve the machine, wait until spontaneity emerges, wait until movement happens that isn't about social survival. I'm not talking about apathetic withdrawal, I'm talking about awakened rest. If you slip into despair and apathy, don't worry, just look at them. They can't harm you. Those are the death rattles of the social survival mechanism breaking down. There's something you'll never get back. Freedom is uncertainty, and peace is groundlessness. You've respawned with a completely new set of settings. You have to learn to navigate the world without leaning on illusion, artificial goals, motivations, ambitions. It's like discovering a new sense you didn't know you had, and now you practice using it. Imagine being one of the sightless people in the blind valley, and suddenly you gain sight. The good news is that you'll get better at this new sense of navigation. Increasingly, you'll be able to operate from the razor blade of present moment awareness. You can move through life without consulting imagination, thoughts about the past and the future, and that's why you can enjoy imagination more than ever. Thinking is great, but as the navigator, it was a training wheel. You no longer need it for that purpose. Naturally, trust develops. For strange, magical reasons, the scaffold appears the moment you take the step, and for even stranger, more magical reasons, you may still achieve the thing society wanted you to achieve in the first place. But the way you do it is no longer through intense external struggle, aiming at them directly, but internal alignment, aiming for joyous expression. That's what I mean by divine lethargy. A sense of inner wholeness, completeness, restfulness that spawns as the right amount of action, which can look like plenty of action, for the greatest outcome possible. So for God, laziness is not sin. It's the highest expression of wisdom. God does nothing. God is everything.